Well, GCN is at it again doing science, and it's Cy who's doing the science this time. And what they're talking about, what is the fastest pressure for road bikes? Now, I've done many videos on this. If you go and look through my channel, you'll find them. And it's interesting that now that GCN are basically stating exactly the same thing that I've been saying for many years, bar one particular point. So let's just go over what Cy had to say, because it was sponsored by Zip. I imagine because Zip was featured in it and it did say paid promotion. Let's roll that intro and let's have a bit of a talk about what Cy was talking about and the conditions and situation he did the test in relating to this pressure. Well, the first thing we need to take into consideration with this test that GCN did was that they did it on chip seal. Now, chip seal is a type of road where they put the tar down and then they just tip the stones on the top, and the stones basically get embedded into the tar. So it's not like hot mix. It's not smooth. It's very, very rough. And the sizes of the stones that they drop on can vary in size depending on what they're using to do that road. So it's extremely rough. Now, when you have a rough road or the surface is much rougher, you need to run the pressure lower because you have a certain amount of energy loss when you're trying to lift the bike and the rider. So if the tyre can act as a shock absorber by using the air volume in the tyre, then you can make a lower pressure and the air acts as a shock absorber like you do on a car, and then it doesn't lift the bike and the person. Therefore, more of the energy is used to propel you forward. It's not being wasted trying to lift it over every single little stone. And this is basically what he was saying, not in that detail, but basically saying that this is why it's faster. And he used some figures for the size of tyre and the rim size and everything from a white paper that Zip presented, and the pressures were 53 front and 57 back for his weight. Now, that's what makes all this very complicated, because if you were running on hot mix with that same setup, same weight of person, everything like that, you'd be running higher pressures. So what are you going to do? Every time you change road surface, you're going to get off your bike, look up your Zip chart, change your tyre pressures. We're not. No one's doing that. So that is the issue. Now, the only thing that I disagree with, that what Cy was saying, was talking about hysteresis, and what they were saying, and this is the whole argument that they put forward for wider tyres. What they say is that the contact patch of the tyre on the road varies because you're running a bigger tyre and the tyre patch is wider and shorter rather than longer and skinnier with a smaller tyre at the same pressure. But the contact point, the contact area is the same. It's only when you lower the pressure that you get some advantages, which is on rougher surfaces. Now, when we talk about hysteresis, if we look at a tyre, we go to a bike shop and we look at a tyre, like especially like a hookless or tubeless tyre, you'll see that when you feel it, it's very much like a rubber material. It's like a thick rubber, like if you wanted to cut it with a knife, it'd be pretty hard. It's thick and it's rigid, and you try to bend it or squeeze it out or flatten it out, you feel resistance. Now, that resistance is energy loss. If it takes more energy to flex that tyre or move that tyre or reshape it, I'm using energy to do that. It doesn't just bend easy like as if I had a t-shirt or a cloth or a cotton tyre. Now, I've got the old hat on here, so I'm a bit of a Veloflex fan, but these are cotton tyres, and this is why you can't talk about the hysteresis of the tyre, because a cotton tyre is significantly better, is going to have less losses in the walls of the tyre than your normal tubeless type, hookless type tyre that has extra threads in it to give it rigidity. And also it's a much thicker rubber. You can actually see it. In fact, it's interesting that tyres have actually become a bit more stiffer and more rigid with the modern tyres, and they have more flashing on. They seem to be a injection molded type tyre, whilst the older tyres seem to be a little bit more flexible. Maybe they reckon because they're running a bigger, rounder tyre, because they're huge and the diameter is not as tight, they can get away with it because your flexing of the curvature is less. So it may not be effectively, if you have a wider tyre compared to a skinnier tyre, may not be that much more. But at the end of the day, the argument about wider tyres giving less hysteresis is kind of, yeah, it's an argument that is, I don't think would make any significant difference. And also, if you made them the same diameter, right, not relating to the fact that they're bigger, right, they're a softer diameter, then a cotton tyre is going to have far less hysteresis than a vulcanized or rubberized tyre. So that's the only thing I disagree with. So it's interesting how, if you go back through what they say in these shows, is that the story slightly varies. It's like Chinese whispers, you know, like if you go back 10 years ago, you'd have them saying one thing, and as the years go by, it's like these Chinese whispers of the same show and the same people gradually, incrementally changing their tune. So interesting. Oh, and this is why I wanted to highlight this, especially since we got Chris Miller in my last video wants to cancel GCN. Just nice to see them in one last moment before Chris goes over and gets them cancelled. But jokes aside, I will have to say this for GCN. Their video and their filming and their production is excellent. I was just watching this one, which they just, I think it was about 20 hours ago that they released it, about these tyre pressures. And regardless of what you say about GCN, their production value is really excellent. The sound quality from Sai, the way he speaks, the guy that's filming it, like 1000%, they're a very professional unit. So that's something I'm going to give them. The only thing that is their cycling channel, which is their product or story or whatever they're saying, is obviously heavily influenced by the products. Now, something that I found very interesting in that video is that they had like a measuring valve that they say is very accurate. Now, when people say very accurate, I come from an accuracy background. I kind of like go, right, because you can't just say something's accurate compared to what? What is the variances? What are the variances at 10 PSI? What are the variances at 100 PSI? No unit measures perfectly linearly. It's just not. So you're going to have variance in that product. It's going to have errors. What are the errors? Have they compared it to national standards? I'd probably say not. There's no calibration certificate with it, so on, so on. So when they say accurate, you can probably say good enough for cycling. But anyway, the valve that was on there, he connected it to his phone. Now, for me as a cyclist, I don't want to be pulling out my phone to look at my tyre pressure. It's like pulling out your phone is just a pain. I just want to be able to look at my cycle computer, and I just want to see that pressure on there. So this is something that I'm asking the industry, or SRAM or Hammerhead, because they're all the same company now. How about we can have those tyre pressures in the head unit, the computer head unit, so we can see that pressure constantly? And also, it could also warn you if you have a flat, so if the tyre starts to deflate before you get to a point where you may lose control of the vehicle or the wheel may slide out, it could actually start flashing or something like that, saying that there's a rapid change in pressure in the tyre. It could give you some sort of warning, and also you'd be able to see that pressure in real time on your computer as you're riding along 100%. So that'd be a nice little feature if SRAM or Hammerhead can incorporate that into their computer unit. Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. Good to see GCN's coming around to Waynosfotos science, and GCN science is starting to align. Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. Leave your comments down below, and I will see you next vid.